Hey, welcome everybody to our live stream. We're so glad to have you with us. This is going to be a pretty straightforward live stream, about 30 minutes or so. We really want to focus on our topic of engagement. How do we increase engagement through something that we're getting a lot of questions about? You might be as well, and that has to do with the sorts of specific activities that you can use via AI, whether it's in the classroom or outside of the classroom, outside of a workshop, to better engage your learners. So today we're going to be focusing on role plays, and I'm going to walk you through the setup of a role play. In fact, I'll show you if you want to follow along with me and do this as I'm doing it. And in fact, if you want to do exactly the same thing that I'm doing, I'll give you all of the ingredients that you need to do that. Before we jump in though, in case this is your first time joining us, I did want to take just a moment to introduce myself and my background. My name is Jim Wagstaff. I'm one of the co-founders of Noodle Factory. That's one of the things I do, in addition to a few other things that are all related to this subject, as you can see here on the screen. Matter of fact, I'm going to be teaching a class this Friday where we're going to be doing, over the course of a half day, a lot of the things that we're going to attempt to do in roughly 30 minutes today, but more in the context of lesson planning for workplace learning, but also for the classroom, and helping teachers and facilitators to get really comfortable with the use of AI tools. So that, outside of my work with Noodle Factory, is a lot of what I do. There is my contact information if you would like to stay in touch. So please feel free to reach out. There's my LinkedIn information, my email address. So both of those are good places to find me and good places to engage. What we're going to do right now, before I do that, let me just share one other thing with you. I always forget to do this. We do have an AI Educator Network. This is a Facebook group that if you're interested, you can just scan that QR code or go to that link, that URL, and join. That is where you will find like-minded individuals who are on a very similar journey to you, most likely, really trying to figure out how can we best use AI in our teaching and learning approaches. So with that in mind, let me just sort of lay out what we're going to do today and how we're going to approach this. I mentioned we're going to be focusing in on role plays. I actually have a list of things that I want to make sure that we cover today. I've written it down, or actually printed it out. And the first thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to set up a role play, show you how to do that, and walk you through that in the context of a teacher or the teacher's point of view. So we'll do that from the administrative side of things, and then we'll get the experience as a student. I'll play the role of a student. You could do that as well if you wanted to follow along. And very importantly, the role play that we're going to generate and create and experiment with uses a rubric to guide the feedback that a student gets at the end of that role play. In fact, we could even assign marks or a score to that, even down to the individual rubric items, and we may do that today. In fact, I think I might give that a try, even though we've got some time constraints. And then we'll look at the analytics. I've got some examples of analytics on rubric-based or rubric-driven role plays that are moderated by AI that you can have a look at. Now we're going to be using, I've already done a little bit of setup just to save us some time here, but not too much. We're going to be using an avatar, a coach called NutriSensei. And NutriSensei, if you read into that, is really good at understanding nutrition. I've picked nutrition as the subject because that's a topic that kind of cuts across all sorts of age groups, whether it's younger learners through secondary school, university, even into workplace learning or adult learning. So it's something we can all appreciate, kind of like economics, certain other subjects where they work really well with different age groups. So let me jump over to my browser, and if you are interested in following along, this is certainly not a requirement, but if you go to noodlefactory.ai either now or maybe later, you can sign up for a free account if you don't already have one. Very simple, and when you sign up, that's going to take you to this admin page once you're all done and that's where we're going to start. So if you want to sign up, great. If not, maybe later you can watch this recording and follow along and go ahead and get set up. I happen to be using today just a single source for our student engagement. It's an open source textbook called Nutrition, Science, and Everyday Application. And I've chosen this one as well because it kind of cuts across different age groups. This is used with all sorts of different learners in different settings who are interested in nutrition. Now, I have, just for the sake of time, done a little bit of upfront work, as I mentioned. So let me show you that. And I'm going to jump over and show you what I have done already. So I've created, this is my set of agents that I have set up. Most of these are demo agents, but here's one called NutriSensei, and that's the one that I have set up. So we're going to go ahead and I'll show you how I did set this up. There's the admin page that we'll be back into in a moment. The first thing that you want to do is just go ahead and set up the contextualized chat or indexing your content. And all you have to do in this case is just drag in the content, or you could point to a website. You could, if we were in an LMS, you could point to the pages or documents that are in the LMS. So while that's working, we'll kind of let that work. That'll take not too long, but it's indexing the entire textbook that I've uploaded. Remember that textbook is here. I just took the PDF copy of that, dragged it in. While that is working, or was working, I went ahead and did a little bit of branding and changed some of the settings. So remember our NutriSensei? Well, I had ChatGPT go ahead and create for me an avatar, an image of NutriSensei. I gave a little description of an avocado. Not going to make any changes on the agent persona or language. We'll leave those as is. And basically, we're done. I've put a little agent description in. NutriSensei is this wise, witty guide who helps students make smart, healthy choices by turning nutrition facts into fun, interactive learning. Now, you'll notice here, I am focusing on Noodle Factory. I probably should have said this in advance. We, in our past live streams, have made this very broad. We've focused on a lot of different tools, and we've intentionally not focused on Noodle Factory very much. But based on some requests and some questions that we've gotten around role plays in particular, we are going to focus in on Noodle Factory. I should say, however, that all of the things that we're doing today, you could really do this in a broad or wide variety of tools, including the general purpose tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. The thing, though, and this is another reason why I've chosen to focus on Noodle Factory, the thing that you lose when you're using a general purpose tool is control, visibility, the analytics. So I have, and you've seen me probably on other live streams, I've done GPTs and GEMs in those tools, in ChatGPT and Gemini, but even there, it's a little difficult at a student level, and certainly at an aggregate level, to get good data and to be in control. So what you just saw me do in that setup, using the textbook, basically we have taken that textbook and created, I call it a walled garden. It's sort of a safe space where students or learners can go, and they're not going outside to the wider world. They're only working in the content that I've given the tool access to. So with all that said, let's now take a look at, with that very, very basic setup on the admin side of things, what does the student experience look like? So if we go over here and we go back to our browser, I'm just going to click on Learner View. So if you happen to be following along with me, we've got our knowledge all uploaded, and you can see that that's been synced, it's been contextualized. We're going to be setting up some exercises, but if I go to the Learner View, now you can see this is all set up and ready to go, and all going to plan. There is NutriSensei, so we're good. We can say hello just to get the conversation started, and NutriSensei will ideally respond back to us. Yeah, great. So we're ready to dive in. We're going to come back, though, once we have the role play done in just a moment. But let me describe what it is we're going to do. And I'll show you now, just in terms of the philosophy behind this. I have an assignment. You could call it an assessment because we're going to be doing some feedback and some grading. But philosophically, I want to share with you kind of how I approach this when I'm thinking about assignments or assessments or projects, basically the use of AI by a learner. So I kind of categorize this relatively informally in three different types. There are AI-aligned assignments, assessments, or projects where basically it's all lights are green. It's all systems go. You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to limit your use of AI because really what I'm trying to do is extend potentially what's happening in the physical classroom or the virtual classroom. AI, in this sense, is very integrated into everything that we're doing, and the use of AI is very much encouraged. So the AI role here is to scaffold the learning, to augment the learning, to iterate the learning in different ways. And my role in guiding students is to show how to properly use AI, the ethical approaches towards using AI. However, I'm not going to limit the use of AI in any way. On the other hand, there are times when I want to make things relatively AI resistant, where I'm discouraging or even constraining the use of AI. In previous live streams, you've seen me demonstrate that, basically by creating milestones or portions of an activity that are very difficult for AI to replicate. Things that AI can do very well simply by copying and pasting out of a general purpose tool to complete some sort of activity or project. I don't want to allow for that, and so I make it really hard for a learner to just copy and paste. So here what we're trying to do is reinforce originality and context and critical thinking, and there are a lot of different ways that we can do this. In fact, if you want to go back and look at some of the examples that we went through in previous live streams, a lot of them have to do with making things hyper-local or hyper-contextual, things that you can't just easily get out of a generative AI tool. Today, however, we're going to be focusing on what is called being AI conscious. And this is a term I had the very great good fortune to work with Mohawk College in Canada as a part of the AAC&U, the American Association of Colleges and Universities AI Institute, in the previous academic year, and got to know some of the team from Mohawk College. And there was a colleague there who came up with this term. I'm not sure if it's his original term, but he used it. It was the first time that I heard it. I said I would always give Mohawk credit for that, AI conscious. I love this because really it's about being intentional and thoughtful in the way that we apply AI in assignments, in projects, in approaches with learners. And this is going to vary widely task by task. Sometimes it might be a full green light. Sometimes it might be a little bit of caution, some guardrails. Other times there might be some restrictions. But essentially, because I'm conscious of the way that I'm using AI in the assignment, assessment, or project, it really forces me to think through the boundaries and the checkpoints that I put in place. So, said all that to say, here is the example of the assignment or the role play in this case, that we're going to be doing today. It basically has 4 parts. The very first thing that we want students to do is to engage in some dialogue with NutraSensei. Just explore common dietary advice in Noodle Factory, in the Noodle Factory instance in Canvas. That comes from the open source textbook that we looked at earlier. Think about recommendations, explore that, maybe come up with approaches towards clients. In this case, we're going to be playing the role of a dietitian, and the AI will be a client who wants to eat better, but is on a tight budget. And so what are the questions that I might need to come up with? Now, I've already done some of that work, but this is the sort of work that we want students to do in exploring this topic with Noodle Factory, and it's all based on the textbook, and it could be other information, but in this case, the textbook that we uploaded. The third step, and this is where we're going to really focus today, is on the role play. So doing the role play and getting the feedback, very importantly, so the student knows how they performed. Were they empathetic? Did they demonstrate some nutritional knowledge? Were they practical in their approaches? Were they thinking critically as well, so that they didn't fall prey to things that might sound logical but might not be good nutritional advice? And then the fourth step is really linking this back to what's going on in the classroom, which could be an activity in the physical classroom where we have a group discussion around dietary advice, around approaches towards clients, or it could be in a forum, or it could be in a virtual environment. It really doesn't matter, but it's closing the loop and bringing that back into the classroom. Okay, so with all that in mind, let's jump back over to our Noodle Factory platform, and we're in the student area right now. I'm going to close this and go back into our admin panel because we need to set up the role play. Now, I'll confess, I've done a little bit of pre-work on this, and the pre-work that I've done is on filling out the rubric. Now, I'm just going to flash this up on the screen so that you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the rubric that I'm using. There are 5 components, the criteria that we're using in this assessment or this feedback: understanding nutritional concepts, clarity and structure of advice, empathy and communication style, practicality and relevance of the recommendations that we're making, engagement and responsiveness, and then you can see the assessment criteria or a more detailed description of each one of those areas. So I've already fed that into my rubric just for sake of time. So now all we need to do is give the roles. So what are we asking the AI assistant to play? I've already done a bit of a write-up on this. So let me add that in. Basically, we want the AI assistant to act like a client. The client is feeling tired. They want some advice on practical, budget-friendly tips to engage your diet, engage in improving your diet and energy levels. So that's our AI tutor role. The student role is really the flip side of that. So we want the student to play the role of a dietitian who's going to guide this client down a path of healthier eating, boosting energy without overspending. And so this student's task, and this is in the rubric that the student would see in advance, they need to be thoughtful, they need to be empathetic, they need to provide good advice, and also make sure that they are not giving advice that sounds good, but it needs to be evidence-based advice. So with that, I can go ahead and add in the scenario description. In this case, I'm going to be just a little bit lazy, and I'll go ahead and get AI to do that. I click on the AI Assistance button, and once that has been generated, we'll just have a look at that. Yeah, so I had gotten rid of what was in there before, so we replaced that. Take a look at that. Generally looks pretty good. In the real world, I would probably spend a little more time on that, but we'll go ahead and save those changes. And with that, we're basically ready to get started. Now I could do some other branding things. I could bring a button in. I could make some changes in terms of what the experience looks like. I'll go ahead and bring a button in just so you can see how that works. And I'll drag that in. Oops, missed that. There we go. So I'll drag that in. So what that will allow us to do now is to have a button. So when we come back over here into the learner view, I'll go ahead and start a new chat session. And there we go. So there's our role play button. So if we were actually going down the path as the assignment is laying out for us, so you remember the assignment that we had over here. So the first steps, we're going to skip that just for the sake of time. And I know many of you are interested in the role play component of this. So we're going to jump right into the role play. So let's go ahead and click on that role play button. And we'll get started. So my role play partner in this case, NutriSensei, is saying, okay, here's the scenario. I'm, as we know, a client who's feeling tired. I've got a budget constraint, and you're going to be playing the role of the dietitian. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, let's get started. Now, I'm going to be using my keyboard a lot, just again for the sake of time. But we could be using our voice. We could also switch over and use an avatar and engage with the avatar, although this is not NutriSensei, as you can see, but our avatar. So yeah, we're going to stick with the keyboard. So our partner saying, yeah, thanks for taking the time to meet with me. I'm feeling tired lately. I think my diet might be part of the problem. Okay, great. All right, so let's just go ahead and ask this question. What do you usually eat in a typical day? Okay, all right. And do you often skip meals? So we'll just kind of let this role play unspool a bit. Okay. All right, so no judgment, no judgment. So let's go ahead and ask another question. How much water do you drink daily? Okay, so we're starting to see a little bit of a trend here. So if I'm a nutritionist or a student of nutrition, I'm starting to see a trend. Okay, now let's ask, okay, what type of food budget do you have each week? Okay, do you eat out a lot? Okay, so this is actually something interesting. Do you have access to a kitchen and a fridge? Okay, so we've got the basics here. All right, so let's ask a few more questions. Where do you usually shop for groceries? Okay, and a couple of other things. Do you feel comfortable cooking basic meals? All right, bear with me here. We want to give the AI tutor enough engagement so that I can get some feedback once the role play is done. All right, one last question about this. Do you have any food storage or space limitations? Okay, well that's good. Now I think we're starting to get a sense of what we might be able to advise this client on. So let me ask just a couple more questions. Have you noticed any foods that make you feel tired or sluggish? And by the way, this is not my area of expertise, so I might be getting pretty bad feedback at the end of this. I might be on a completely wrong track. If we have a nutritionist on the live stream today, maybe you can give me some feedback. Okay, sluggish after heavy meals. When I snack, I crash. I get a burst of energy, but then I crash. Okay. And are there any health restrictions or, or dietary restrictions that I should know about? Okay. So here now we're going to get to the advice portion. I'm going to act a little bit more like a coach, and I'll ask, would you be open to planning and cooking meals ahead of time? Excellent. Okay, so open to that. How many times a week do you think you could cook? I'm actually thinking I need to take my own advice here and maybe do this for myself. Okay, so that's actually quite a high number. And let's ask this question. Are you willing to try new ingredients if they are affordable? Okay, now I'm going to really act like a coach here. I'm not going to give the answer. Probably in the real world, if you were a nutritionist, you'd go ahead and give the answer. But I'm going to go ahead and, like a coach, ask this question based on everything we've discussed. What are some options that you see to eat in a more healthy way that boosts your energy and saves you money? See how our AI tutor has picked up on anything. Okay, going a little bit further than I would have. Okay, that's great. I think probably getting a little bit of this from the textbook. That sounds great. I'll say try that, and let's reconnect in 1 week. Call me if you need anything. All right, and that should bring us to the close of the role play. All right, wonderful. Okay, so that, now thank you for your patience in letting that completely unspool, because what we've done is we've gone through basically the entire role play. And so now the AI has a lot of different things that it's seen me try to do, and it's going to be able to give me feedback on each one of these areas. So you notice each one of the rubric items, I'm now getting feedback, things that I did well, things that I could have done better, like I didn't really focus on particular types of food, things that might have been more energy centric or sustainable when it comes to boosting energy in a sustainable way. My clarity and structure. So here's what you did well. Here's what you could have done better. I didn't summarize key points at the end of each section or at the end of the session. And I was being a coach, so I put it back on to the learner in this case. So you can see, if you just run your eyes down this list of things, there were some things that I did okay, and there are many things that I could have done a lot better. So those are now all captured in the dashboard. And if there were marks associated with each one of these role play components, oh, okay, and we did. We actually had a mark there. So my overall score did pretty well, so 8.5 out of 10. But all of that is now captured in the dashboard. Let me just show you from another role play what that looks like, because we don't have a whole lot of data from this role play. Let me just flash over here and I'll show you from another role play what this looks like. So you can see here, pardon me, at a top level, I can see out of 18 submissions, just a very broad overview of how learners are performing. I can dive into the individual learner level, see exactly the sort of feedback that each learner was giving. I can send reminders either automatically, or I can manually send reminders if learners have not completed the role play. So all of this is done inside of the platform. And by the way, given that most of us would be using this in some sort of learning management system or learning experience platform, all of this can be captured or passed over in the learning management system. So that's a really important thing to remember. Okay, so just coming back to what we were aiming to do today, let me make sure I have hit everything on my list here. Yeah, so I think that really covers off everything I wanted to show you today. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of food for thought, pun intended, about how you can use a role play to extend, not replace, what's going on in your classroom or a forum or some sort of activity. So here's some advice, and I did go ahead and write this down for myself because this is the same advice that I give learners in classes where we're doing this over a longer period of time. So if you want to try this, basically start small, like I did today. Pick one scenario, one activity in a unit. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of effort. You saw there, it basically took me less than 10 minutes to get that up and running. Use rubrics and make those visible to students. So don't make this a secret. Just like you would with a marking guide, go ahead and publish that to a student. What I'm doing, and I don't think I mentioned this here, is I'm using this rubric-based role play with marks as a formative assessment. So I want students to try this as many times as they need to. I want them to have visibility to the sort of assessment that's going on. Try mixing role play with other types of quizzes. Maybe that's multiple choice, which can also be moderated by AI. It can be open text answers. It can be all of the different types of quizzes or knowledge checks that you might use, but you can link that with the role play, and that can be very interesting because there you can get instant feedback. And then invite students to maybe get involved in creating the next role play. That could be a very interesting AI conscious, even AI resistant assignment. One thing that I did not mention is that even in these role plays, If you're familiar with the Noodle Factory platform, you can obviously change language. So I might say, let's switch to Mandarin. And this is not a language learning tool necessarily, but even though the underlying content is in English, I can go ahead and switch to Mandarin. And I can do that with my voice or my keyboard. And even in the role plays, students who might be a little more comfortable in another language can go ahead and switch to that language. So I did not want to forget to mention that. All right, so that brings us to the end of our live stream for today. A little bit of a different one. I know this was meant to be very practical, so hopefully you found it to be so. If you liked what you saw, if you're interested in engaging more, obviously you can go and try out all of the things that we did today in a free version of a Noodle Factory instance that you can be up and running with in just a few minutes. If you have questions, you can reach out to me here at my email address or over LinkedIn, or you can use this QR code and this URL to join the AI Educator Network. So with that, thank you so much for joining today. And we hope to see you next month when we do another live stream. We'll let you know what that topic will be very shortly. If you like this sort of practical approach, let us know. Maybe put that in the comments section. Be sure to like, to subscribe, and stay involved in this sort of journey that we're all on together. Thank you so much. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today. If you liked what you heard, if you found it useful, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe so you don't miss any of the content that we publish on a weekly basis. Also, head over to our website at noodlefactory.ai. There's tons of free resources there that focus on teaching and learning with AI. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to stay involved, join our community of Practice and Play, which is in our Facebook group, where we talk about really practical and useful approaches to using AI in teaching and learning. Until next time, happy noodling.